Nike bag, give me the check. I need the money and power, respect, but I promise I'm repping the O to the dead. Hey, oof, I sold them out of my way. I don't got nothing to say. Now they can't run at my pace. Yeah, they know that we ain't the same. 402, we rap the game. I told them this ain't a game.
Oh, yo, what is up? It's Phins Take with CB83. Hey, back to you for another show. Let's get it. A camp is almost here. It was the night, the evening before training camp. The Miami Dolphins veterans report tomorrow. The rookies are already in the building, getting acclimated, having their rookie meetings, meeting with team representatives, getting into the lay of the land, where to eat at in the cafeteria. But the vets come in tomorrow and they're going to shake it up for the rookies. They get a little rookie hazing going, and just start getting to it, man. So I love this time of year. You got to love training camp because it's an opportunity for the guys to really just get in the building, start getting acclimated for the season, start to gel with their teammates, bonding experiences. What you guys don't realize is these guys spend a lot of time with each other, a lot of time away from their families, on the road, traveling. So these guys really become like brothers. It's really a brotherhood over the next, year or so. So it's a real beautiful thing to see the guys come together, see them start practicing, start getting after it, start being competitive. I just love this time of year. You got to get excited. The smell of fresh grass cut, the smell of the morning dew getting out there on the field. You got to love it. Whether you're at the high school level, the college level, wherever you're at, you got to appreciate it just because you get a chance to kind of basically see some guys kind of grow before your eyes and end up making some plays, man. So shout out to everybody in the building so far. We got about 10 in the building. Do me a favor, hit the like button on your way in. Let everybody know we're live. I appreciate everybody coming out for this afternoon/evening show. Just to holler at the kids, say what's up, man. What's good with everybody in the building? I'm gonna do a little rundown. Let me go ahead and make this change so I don't get the bots in here real quick. Let me update this. This will take about a second. Shout out to everybody in the chat. I see everybody in here. I'm gonna get to you. I promise you. Hey, we bringing the energy though. You already know how we come on these shows. We get it in, bro. Let's go. Yes, sir. Another day to talk Miami Dolphins football. The day before training camp, man. What are you guys looking forward to most, man? I'm gonna do a little Q&A session, but I want to know what you guys are looking forward to most. We also got to stop, pause, right? We got to stop, pause, and we got to appreciate what's been built this offseason. Now, every year, the team kind of changes slightly, right? They're going to cut guys. They're going to add guys. Guys go to practice squad, et cetera, right? Free agency, there's a lot going on. What I do want to appreciate is what Chris Grier has built this season, right? Last year, I thought we were a really good football team. I thought we would be competitive. We were, right? We ended up losing our starting quarterback for 5 games. It hurt us. We ended up losing other guys in other areas. It hurt us, right? But we still got into the playoffs and played Buffalo down to the wire, right? And had a shot to kind of move on to the divisional round. Now, at this point in the season, it's another offseason, right? And Chris Grier's done nothing. Him and Mike McDaniel together have done nothing but make the team better. Whether it's coaching, whether it's talent, the team is better than last year in a couple different aspects, right? Offensively, defensively, and special teams, I felt like we got better in every phase this offseason, right? Got better in every phase. And honestly, I felt like last year's team was a really good team. I thought last year's team was a 12-win team, right? I thought they were capable of doing that. So this year we add more talent, we add some more depth, we add better coaching, and now we get the opportunity to kind of do it all over again. Try to go at it, give it another go, kind of with the same core group of guys, but some added pieces that will really make a difference when it comes to making this Super Bowl run. Right now, am I worried about a team like the Jets? No, I'm not worried about those guys, right? If we do what we need to do and control what we need to control, then we'll be fine. We'll be fine because this team's good enough to beat anybody. But what you can't do down the stretch and what you can't do late in games is beat yourself. That's what it really comes down to. And I think Tyron Armstead kind of highlighted that in one of his most recent interviews. Just playing smarter, not beating yourself, making the right plays, and not letting the referees get involved in the game, the outcome of the game, right? I think that's going to have a lot to do with it. But let me go ahead and get into my shout outs real quick. Shout out to Marino's Goat, who was in here first with the fins up. Shout out to you, Marino's Goat. The homie King Grizzy is in the building. He says, y'all still ain't started camp, lazy ass mofos. No, we have not started camp yet. The only teams that started camp were the New York Paper Planes and the Cleveland Browns. And I got the Cleveland Browns in the Hall of Fame game. I got them beating your little Paper Planes in the Hall of Fame game. So shout out to the Cleveland Browns. My cousin Elijah Moore plays on the Cleveland Browns. I'm looking forward to seeing him spanking that ass. You already know what time it is, man. Shout out to 72 Phins logo. What's good? He says, what's up, boy? Let's go Phins all day. Yes, sir. Let's get it. Hey, the homie Q's in here. Q said, must be another banger. Yes, sir. It's definitely another banger. Man, Phins Take says, Chris Grier flowers. LOL. Grier has a chance to be saved by Skylar, and if Skylar is what all you two in there say he is, then Grier is getting flowers because he's crying looking for another job, CB. No way. Jose. I like Skylar Thompson. I just don't think he's quite ready yet, and that's fair, Pete. I think you I think your Skylar take is a bit much, but hey, I'm gonna let you rock with it, bro. Raul P is in the building. Raul's one of my members. He's in the member gang. Shout out to the members in the community. Chef Jew, Shake Money, Raul P, Cruz in the member gang. We got a few homies in there. If you want to become a member, I think you have to do it on an iPad or tablet. But you hit the little $ below, become a member. Shout out to all the members. I got some special things coming for them. You already know what time it is, man. That's how we get down. I'm gonna send them something special once we hit that 1K mark, and we're creeping up on that 1K mark, man. We're at 852 right now. Appreciate all the love and support, the subscribers. You guys have been fantastic. It's been nothing but love and support. So hey. That's how we rock it. You know how we do, man. We get it in over here. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. You already know what time it is, man. So let me get back up to this real quick. The homie Ritter is in here. He says the NFL is better off with the Skylers of the world as QB3. Yes, sir. We are better off with Skylar's QB3. If Skylar's QB1, just know we are in for a long ride. So that's something I just don't want to see. Cap, what's good with you, man? Cap's in the building. He says, gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen, what's good with you, Cap? Pete says he's the fifth. Like, okay, Pete, I see you doing your thing. Newfoundland, almost there. Hey, 'twas the night before camp. Them boys start getting after it tomorrow, man. Looking forward to it. Pete says, so Barry came out and spoke about how players around the league, like Mahomes, left Tua out of the top 10. What is going on, CB? He was number one in so many categories. Why? Now, a good question. I think this is a fair question, Pete. And I think these lists are fun, right? These lists are very fun to analyze, to critique. I could see Tua being out of people's top 10. And that's because of the injury concerns. When you're missing 4 to 5 games a year, it's going to be hard for people to take you serious and put you in a top 10 list, because there's guys on that list who have been there for every game, and who've played decent, and maybe not better than Tua, but they played decent enough for their team to maybe win games or compete, right? I always say, hey, the best ability is availability. So if you're not available for your team, then you're hurting your team, right? So I can understand why he's being left off some of these lists. Now, injuries aside, right? Let's say if we said, hey, it's not about injuries, it's just about play, performance, what you've done on the field while you've been on the field. I think Tua will be in top 10 on a lot of these lists. I just don't think that's the case. There's a lot of context there that people don't want to discuss. And the fact that he hasn't been available for some games, that's going to be a cause for concern, and they're going to leave him off the list. So I can understand that to some extent. Now, the only person that could change that is Tua Tagovailoa himself, right? So he's got to be available. He's got to stay on the field. He's got to be consistent. He's got to be there for his teammates. He's got to be available. Point blank, period. Right? Because we need him. We need him to go make a run. If we're going to make a run like we say we're making a run, we're definitely going to need him. So Cap is a 6 like. Appreciate you, Cap. A good question. Good question, Pete. I do like the question. Pete says, I'm concerned. I'm thinking the worst, dude. I'm afraid someone getting hurt in camp. It's inevitable. And that is inevitable. Guys will get hurt in camp. Hopefully it's not one of the top dogs, but it happens. Now, what we need to do is we need to make sure that guys behind them are ready to go, right? And that's what we talk about when we talk about building a football team. The football team is only going to be as good as its weakest link, right? So if you have a chain and the chain is, some of the links of the chain are weak and they're broken, and they can't perform, guess what? Your chain isn't shit. It's not. It's just not very good, right? So you need to make sure that those dudes are ready to go. Those dudes at the bottom of the roster, that 53, that 45 through 53 who doesn't see a lot of time, you got to make sure those guys are ready to go. And injuries happen. We know it's going to happen. We know it will be somebody. We hope we would like to go into a season and not have any injuries. It just doesn't happen. So guys got to step up. They got to be ready to play. And I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm looking forward to it. Man, cheers, CB83 homie. Sunday camp finally. Iceman, what's good? Iceman will be in the building Sunday. Hey, Iceman maybe provides me with a little content for you guys, and maybe you get some camp stuff on Sunday. Looking forward to seeing that, bro. Looking forward to hearing about the reports. You guys finally get in there on Sunday. Take a look at the Miami Dolphins. Maybe I go down. I don't know. Maybe I do go down. We'll see. But it's going to be very interesting to see how camp unfolds, who's playing where, who's playing with Unit 1 and Unit 2. Now, the reporters can't really tell you where guys are playing, whether they're playing in the first or second group and where they're lining up, but fans can do whatever they want to. So if TD is down there and TD is saying, hey, this who's lining up with the ones, hey, that's who's lining up with the ones. Right? So there's plenty of opportunities for us to get some intel. There's some things that reporters can't do that YouTube guys can do, right? So make sure you tune in. Make sure you subscribe, because we're going to be able to give you some information that not even the beat writers can give you, right? The beat writers are held to a different standard. They can only report what the teams allows them to report. And the other guys, us, the YouTubers, the small guys, who are going to be big guys eventually, can get in there and kind of tell you the nuance, exactly what's going on, and so on. So be sure to subscribe. Iceman has a channel. Be sure to subscribe to him. Pete has a channel. He's down there. Subscribe to everybody. Cap, what's good? What you says, dudes are dropping like flies in camp so far, and it's only day one. It happens. It really does happen, man. And that's why the offseason is so important in terms of getting your body right and just making sure you're in shape. Because when you get out there, it's like it's full go, right? They don't want to have to worry about conditioning, right? They expect you to be in shape when you get to camp. They don't want to have to run. They don't have time to be running you all day. right? So they want you, even when I was in college, bro, do your workout over summer, come back prepared and ready to go. Run them 18 110s, that conditioning test. You better be in shape. If not, you're going to be running in your own time. You're not going to be running on my time because their time is valuable, right? They got to get instruction in, they got to get film in. So they'll run you in the morning or run you in the afternoon if you're not ready to go. Throw you with the strength and conditioning guys, and you'll be out there running. So make sure you come into shape ready, your body's ready to go, you're hydrated, you're peeing white, you're peeing clear, not peeing no yellow. You got it's a pee chart up there. You better make sure your piss is damn near clear. That's how you know you're hydrated. And that's what I would tell my guys. Just come ready to go. Because once we get down to it, we're not stopping for nobody. You get hurt, okay, we move the drill up, let's keep it going. And that's just how it is. That's the nature of it. Now, we love you as players, of course. We care about you, but one man don't stop the show. It's got to continue on. Shout out to the homie Mr. Polk in the building. What's good, Mr. Polk? What's popping with you, man? How you feeling? How you feeling, Mr. Polk, man? Love to see you. I got all the homies in here. New Finland in the building. It was a secondary last year. We got to stay healthy. I'm with you. The secondary was dropping like flies. Hopefully Nick Needham, Brandon Jones, Trill Williams, these guys come back ready to go. I know some of them aren't ready yet, but I think they'll be ready by the time we kind of get into the gist of it. Like by the time we get into the meat of it, into the meat of camp, them dudes should be ready to rock and roll. Hopefully that's the case. But we got a lot of talent back there too. So having the talent in the room, having the guys there, it's gonna help. It's gonna help. The New York, definitely the New York Paper Planes. S. Harris, what's good with you, man? What's good? Shout out to you, bro. What's good with you? How you feeling? Do your boy a favor, hit the like button, subscribe, support Phins Take with CB83. Let's go, Wolfpack. Bite the like button. Bite the like button, Wolfpack. You already know what time it is, man. Hey, shout out to the homie, big homie, Shake Money in the building. He says, throw them fins up. Shake, what's good with you? Shake's in the member game. You already know how we get down for the member game.
Oh! Yes, sir!
Hey, every time I see the member game pull up, I gotta get them to yes, sir. That's gonna be the ritual for the members game. Shout out to the homie Shake Money. What's good with you, Shake? Raphael in here, YouTube, thumb 15. Yes, sir. Cheers, amigos and amigas. Yeah, man. So let's get into this, man. So I wanted to kind of touch base. So the Miami Dolphins are into basically the fourth year of a rebuild. So we had 2 years under Flores. Basically, right? Two or 3 years. 2 years with Flores, right? So, no, 3 years with Flores. Or was it 2 years with Flores? Man, I'll be forgetting quick. How many years we have with Flo? Coach Flo, Miami Dolphins. He had 2 years with Tua. That was 2, right? Man, y'all comments coming in slow, bro. Slow. Yeah, so let's this rebuild, right? Rebuild under Coach Flo and with Coach Grier. It started off pretty ugly, right? So basically, we tore this thing down, right? Tore it down to the studs, right? Tore it down to the studs and really got to the point where it was so bad that Big Nick says this all the time. Like the Miami Dolphins were being investigated for putting that bad of a football team on the field. They were saying it was unsafe working conditions. Just crazy, like crazy stuff I had never heard of, right? So they really stripped it down to the studs and got to the point where, the team was basically overachieving in year one, right? Flores just had this really competitive spirit about him. And no matter what kind of team he had, he was really focused on winning games, right? He was just really focused on making sure that he was winning games and that he was proving that he was capable of winning games, even with a bad football team. So in that first year, Brian Flores really just kind of overachieved, bro. Really overachieved. And when I say overachieved, I'm talking like 5-win team. That team should have been a 1-win team, right? 1 or 2, maybe 3. Like people were coming into the season saying, "Oh, the Dolphins won't win a football game at all," right? But I knew kind of where we were as a team and how good the Miami Dolphins were. I still felt we had some good players, right? Albert Wilsons of the world, Jakeem Grant, like we still had players. Like we were going through a quarterback shuffle. But it was still good enough to win a couple of games. And that season we did. We surprised teams. Like we beat the Eagles that year. We beat other teams as well. And ended up putting ourselves in a position where we didn't get the first overall pick, right? So as a result of that, I mean, and Brian Flores just honestly, he had this thing about him that it didn't matter who he had, right? It didn't matter who lined up for him. It didn't matter who was on the field. He was going to find a way to win football games with those guys, right? And from the outside looking in, it just seemed like Brian Flores didn't really care about which quarterback he had or whether he wanted Burrow or Herbert or Tua. It didn't really seem like that was a situation to him. It didn't really seem like it was a thing because if he really wanted to pick his quarterback and have all the choices on the table, all he had to do was sit a couple guys or remove a couple guys at the end of some of the games in order to not win those games, right? Right? Be in line with the tank, supposedly, right? But it didn't seem like he was in line with the tank. It seemed like he wanted to win games. He wanted to show what he was capable of. And as a result of that, now we're sitting here, and he has the 3rd pick in the draft, right? And he's able to pick a guy in Tua Tagovailoa. Now, whether he wanted to or not, we don't truly know, right? What we do know is it was a collaboration between him, probably Stephen Ross had a lot to do with it, Chris Grier, and him and Brian Flores, right? So they end up picking Tua Tagovailoa. He's coming off of an injury. He's hurt. And you go into training camp, he's hurt. He's learning. Ryan Fitzpatrick is the quarterback. And you just don't know what you have in him, right? Because you haven't seen him play. But I think Chris Grier and Ross were in a very peculiar situation, right? Chris Grier understands that, hey, we have 2 first-round draft picks the next year. We have the opportunity to select another quarterback. And we kind of need to see what we have in Tua Tagovailoa. Like we kind of like, and I understand it. We weren't going to win a Super Bowl with Ryan Fitzpatrick as our quarterback. It just wasn't going to happen. Man, you guys' comments aren't even showing up. Are they showing up? I think so. Okay. So they just didn't know what they had in Tua Tagovailoa. So having 2 first-round draft picks the next year, they're thinking, hey, we got to kind of see this kid because if not, we're going to draft a quarterback, right? We might as well. And I would be on board with them drafting another quarterback if Tua Tagovailoa came in and he just wasn't – we felt like he wasn't good enough, right? So I think that was the case. Now, Brian Flores wasn't a part of making him – I don't think he was on board with making him the starter quarterback after week 6. Right? I just don't think that was the case. It doesn't make sense, especially with the things he was saying. Hey, if it was my son, I would put him out there. It's not safe for him. He's not ready yet. And then he's in a couple weeks later, right? So we knew it really wasn't his decision. It probably came from upper management, Chris Grier, Stephen Ross, and wanting to see the kid. Also, to his jersey, one of the best on the jerseys in the NFL at the time, right? And there was just a lot of hype around the kid. Everybody wanted to see him play, right? So they get him in there, right? And they put him in against the Rams in the first game. He struggles. He struggles. He takes some hits. Aaron Donald's kind of going off. And in that season, Tua basically was like a roller coaster, like typical rookie stuff, like up and down. But what I didn't like about the season, I didn't like that Brian Flores just didn't leave him in there and let him work through some of the situations he was in or some of the situations he had got himself into, right? So I think when you take a guy out and you bench a guy or you take him out in order to try and win a football game, I think you're only hindering his long-term development. So when Brian Flores was taking him out and sitting him, like in games like Denver and the game like the Oakland game, right? You're only hindering this development. I think you need to work on trying to have him work through those situations. And Brian Flores just wouldn't allow that to happen. He just really wanted to win. And I think that hinders his development and it hinders his confidence. It doesn't let him fight himself out of situations. But during that season, he had some spurts where he kind of played well, right? Now, during this whole time, you're thinking Brian Flores is doing his thing, trying to do the best he has, but he's also kind of piecing the team together with previous guys like Van Noy, guys like Flowers. They're bringing in, veteran guys to kind of put on the team because they have a lot of youth. So Chris Grier is trying to like work along with what Brian Flores wants. He's trying to give him what he wants. He's trying to build a team. So there's a lot there. There's a lot of nuance there, right? And then year 2 comes around. You got the Deshaun Watson situation. And I just felt like in year 2, right, you win the first game, you drop 7 straight games, right? It just seemed like the team wasn't focused and they didn't really have they weren't really ready to play in games. And that's largely on the head coach, right? It's largely on the head coach, especially when it comes down to like field goals or making a call late in the game or discipline with penalties. I thought that season where you have the Deshaun Watson drama, the team just wasn't focused on winning football games. I thought there was just too much drama going on, right? And after the trade deadline, you start to see them kind of lock in. They're like, oh, we don't have to worry about this drama anymore. We can just go out there and play football, right? So they go out there and play. They're winning games. And it comes down to like the last game, basically, Tennessee. And I think just it was a poor showing on Tua. It was a poor showing on everybody. Offense, defense, I think it was a poor showing on everybody. Tua just really kind of stunk it up. Weather's bad. He can't get the ball out. Just a bad situation, right? So now you're just you're trying to build a team, and you're kind of falling flat on your face at the end of the season, right? So and you're competitive, right? You're right in the thick of things. You're right in the thick of it, but you can't quite get over the hump. So then you have the Flores situation. He's fired. McDaniel's brought in. And now you just have a much more confident player in Tua. And now you have guys kind of flocking towards Miami to be a part of this football team, right? If Flores is here, I don't know if we have the type of roster we have right now. I just don't think it's the case. Not a roster built off of having high-end players like Tyreek Hill, Jalen Ramsey, players that are outgoing, outspoken. I'm not sure if that's the case. But what I'm going to do is, I understand that, hey, Grier took over in 2016, right? Took over in 2016. He really doesn't get the helm until 2019, maybe. Tannenbaum's here throughout that time from 2016 to 2018. He really doesn't take over player personnel. And then Gase gets here. Gase is over player personnel to some extent when he gets here. So Grier doesn't really get all the shine or all the ability to call the shots personnel wise, I think until like 2019, 2020. Like it's tough, right? So I don't put all of that on him. I do put part of it on him, but you got to understand that GMs are just in a very difficult situation building a football team. There's a lot that has to go right for them to be successful. And like we talk about the quarterback position being dependent, somebody's got to catch the ball, somebody's got to run the ball, the offensive line has to block, et cetera, right? But when it comes down to it, the GM is a very dependent position also. Like the quarterback's got to play well. The players got to play well. The coaches have to do a really good job of coaching and putting it together. I mean, he's had 2 different coaches really in his stint, right? And I think he's nailed it on the head with the second coach in Mike McDaniel. I think Mike McDaniel's just a smart guy who can build relationships and make it happen, right? Because I've always been a proponent of this, right? So I taught for a while, and I understand that people don't learn from people they don't like, right? And you can say, oh, they're professionals, they get paid to do this. But there are people who go on their jobs every day, don't like their boss, and really don't pay attention to what they say or even, try to learn from them, right? So I think if you have a good boss who supports you and who promotes your professional development, like you're going to be in tune with, what they're singing, with what they got going on. But when you have guys who are micromanagers and you feel like they're always in your business and they never let you get your work done, and you just have a hard time being in tune with what they got going, then you're gonna be more enough to be like, nah, I really don't want to mess with them like that. You're just gonna do your job and kind of go home. But that's what you see in Mike McDaniel, is a guy who was just really trying hard to get the best out of his guys, really wants to put his guys in a position to succeed, because that's really all coaches can do, right? Coaches have a group of guys. These guys are professionals. They want to be the best at what they do, right? They want to go to the Pro Bowls and be in the Hall of Fame and do a number of different things. But it's up to the coach to really put them in that position, right? And if they feel like they aren't being put in a position to be successful, then they're going to question it. They aren't going to go 100%, and they aren't going to put their all into it, right? We heard a lot of questions about guys not being all in with Flores, not studying the game, not watching a lot of film, not being the first guy in and the last guy out, right? You got to create a culture where guys want to come around and do that. And I think that's part of it. You got to create that culture. So yeah, and I think that's what Mike McDaniel has done. I think, like I said, Chris Grier has nailed it with this one with the head coach. Fangio is going to be a fantastic addition. You got 2 head coaches, one on both sides of the ball. It's only right that this team figure it out and get over the hump, especially with the talent, right? Especially with the talent, right? So I appreciate you guys just allowing me to kind of talk on that a little bit. I think Chris Grier doesn't get the props he deserves. I think he's missed on some draft picks for sure. Few guys, Noah Benagity, Eichenberg, Austin Jackson. A lot of these guys are yet to be seen. Like maybe they flop out, maybe they become players, maybe they become solid players. But outside of the few guys in the draft, and just imagine if those guys do become hits and they become breakout players. Like Chris Grier's team will be off the charts. Like just imagine if some of those bubble guys or some of those guys that are tweeners between a backup guy and a starter end up becoming like the highlight of this team, right? Just imagine that. It would be another check on his list. And I know he's had to do a lot in free agency. And I'm cool with that because I understand that you're not going to be able to have a roster full of rookies or third or fourth year guys. At some point you got to go get some dogs who are going to be available, be leaders to the young guys, and be leaders to the guys that are kind of transitioning into that role as being leaders as well, right? Because when you look at our roster, it's usually made up of like three sets of guys: rookies, young guys who are transitioning into the veteran leadership roles, like the guys who are at 4 or 5 years, 3, 4, 5 years in the league. And then you have guys that are kind of vets and who are on their second and third deals, 6, 7, 8 years into the league. Like, those are the three sets of guys, and you got to have a little bit of both on your teams, man. So shout out to everybody in the building. Do me a favor, hit the like on your way in. I appreciate everybody coming in. We got 30 in the room. Hit the like, share, subscribe. Be sure to, if you want to support the channel, you can donate below using the $ in the chat. What's good with you? Everybody's popping in. What's good, everybody? What's good? We're gonna do a little Q&A session. I might drop the link for a little bit, get some of you up here. But I wanted to look at this article too, and it's short. I just wanted to kind of touch on his ranking. Now, when you look at GM rankings, and I'm gonna ask you guys in the chat first, where would you rank Chris Grier in terms of GMs in the NFL? Would he be 10 through 20? Would he be 1 through 10? Where do you guys think he would be in terms of GM in the NFL? Based on what you know, like him basically becoming the dude in 2019, 2020, where would you rank him at? Would he be 10 through 20? Would he be 1 through 10? Mauricio says 10 through 20. JR Black says top 10. Okay. TD Phins Talk says 18th. Okay. 18 TD? Wow. I think that's a bit low, man. Joe Levesquez says 15 through 20. Q says 10 through 20. Okay. And Raul P says 10 through 20. I think Grier's I think he's right in that 10 through 15 range. I would probably put him right outside the top 10, maybe 12, 13 in that range. I think if this team wins big this year, then Chris Grier, if this team goes and wins a Super Bowl, I think we can say Chris Grier is going to be top 5 the following year, because he really stripped the team down to the studs. Like, who's really stripping NFL teams down to the studs and building them all over again? We haven't seen a lot of GMs do it. So I know guys like TD Phins Talk, who's in the chat, he'll say, hey, Chris Grier hasn't really done much. He hasn't hit on a lot, but it's also like, man, he was dealt a situation that wasn't the best situation. And that's just some of the context. Like, the dude really stripped the team down. They were bad. We were grabbing guys off the street. We were grabbing guys from Publix and Walmart and saying, hey, go play football, right? Go play football for us. But you also saw in that time period, you saw Brian Flores do a really good job with some of the guys in the secondary, like Nick Needham. Some of these young guys we have, they really just flourished and became really good football players. And that's what really the difference was, is the coaching and just kind of building it through the draft and doing what you needed to do in free agency to kind of compete, right? So I'd say he would probably be around 12, and I think he's slowly creeping into the top 10. I mean, we could say whatever we want to say about Grier, but this really is the best Miami Dolphins team I've seen in probably 20 years, like point blank period. Like the way this roster is built, and you said it, like he cleared out cap space of those big contracts. Yeah, like the Ndamukong Sues, the Mike Wallaces, the Brandon Marshalls. Those weren't huge contracts. Some of them were, but he got rid of some of the, because what we did was we did just a lot of filling holes, right? Miami Dolphins were the kings of, oh, we're going to grab a guy here, fill a hole, and see if we can plug him in and be competitive, right? And it did nothing but get us a 7, 8, or 9 win season, right? So, and then Joe says, hey, I give him credit for cleaning up the salary cap. Yeah, and he's put us in a situation now where, hey, in the future we might be in a situation, but hey, this is your shot right here. This is your shot to go win it. And when we look at the contracts, and I'm going to address this, it says, why does it seem, Anthony Manzano, what's good with you? It says, why does it seem like Chris Grier is more successful with established free agent players like Tyreek Hill and Teron Armstead, but he struggles to develop his own draft picks, taking away Triple JS. Now, and that's the thing I want you guys to understand, is that development is not on Chris Grier, right? And I think people kind of get the thought process in their head like, oh, Chris Grier is responsible for drafting these guys. Then he's responsible for seeing that they're developed. Chris Grier's job is, and Stephen Ross's job is to hire a head coach who could do that, right? So when it comes to developing the players, they have to defer to the head coach and the staff that head coach brings in, right? So in the Brian Flores situation, when we look at, Tua's development, right? He brought in Brian Flores. He expected Brian Flores to put coaches around Tua that were going to develop him as a player, right? Now, if Brian Flores doesn't have the wherewithal to grab experienced head coaches or experienced OCs or OCs tailored towards developing young quarterbacks, then you're putting yourself in a predicament, right? But that's really not on Chris Grier. That's on Brian Flores. But Chris Grier's job is tied to the head coach. It's tied to the staff that the head coach brings in. So a lot of people will say, hey, Chris Grier doesn't develop his guys. No, it's not about Chris Grier, right? It's about Mike McDaniel and Brian Flores developing the guys, right? Putting players in a position to be successful. That's the key to it all. And that's what I want you guys to understand. As head coaches in the game of football, their job is to put players in a position to be successful. If they aren't developing those guys and doing that, then they are dropping the ball on their end. And if they're dropping the ball on their end, Chris Grier and Stephen Ross have the right to say, hey, this isn't working out for us. We're just not seeing the development. The relationships aren't good. We're going to let you go. We're sorry it happened this way. It just didn't work out. And that's what happens, right? So you got to be completely honest with yourself regarding developing players. That's not Chris Grier's job. His job is to get the coach the talent he wants, the talent he thinks he needs. That's all his job is, right? And usually these coaches are really involved in making these decisions. There's a reason why GMs and head coaches sit next to each other at the draft. They're very close. They have a understanding of what they want. And Chris Grier's job is just to say, hey, all right, I'm going to evaluate it too. And when I evaluate it, I'm going to bring it to you. We're going to put our list together. We're going to collaborate, do it together. And then this is what we'll draft. This is how we'll draft it, right? So a lot of you guys will put this development stuff on Chris Grier. It's not on him. He's just a GM, right? He can't go out there and coach the guys. All he does is go out there, stand, look at practice, see what's going on, see who's making plays, and discuss with the coach, hey, what do you think we need? What are we missing? What are the pieces that you need to be successful, right? So y'all gotta keep it completely honest with yourselves, because Chris Grier's not responsible for doing that. All he's doing is running the numbers, seeing if we can or can't get the players in the building and getting it done. That's it. So I understand people want to get on him about drafting. drafting, that's a lot of that's on the coach and the GM, both of them. Coach knows, right? Coach knows. So TD says wrong. Chris Grier's job is to draft players that can be developed. Not all players drafted can be developed, so the GM can be responsible. Everybody you draft can be developed into a football player. You're not telling me that there are players that get drafted that can't be developed. And that's why football is such like a scheme specific situation. And that's why coaches, when they go to draft and when they're talking to the GM, like Mike McDaniel, for instance, let's look at this, right? So Mike McDaniel wants certain players to fit within his scheme, right? He knows the type of talent they need. He knows what he needs them to run, how strong they need to be. He knows what they played, what they did best in college, what they struggled with in college, what he looks for in his scheme. So he's gonna find guys that fit into his scheme, right? So if he's going to McDaniel, or if McDaniel's going to Grier and say, hey, this is the list of my guys I think would help, that I think could be good players on my team. I don't think Chris Grier is going outside of that list to pick a guy unless it's something crazy and it's something of need. So this is really scheme dependent. All of those guys who are drafted, they're good football players coming out of college, right? That's why they're getting drafted. They're great athletes, right? They've played well. They've made plays. They've put good film. They've went to maybe they were at the Senior Bowl and the coaches got a chance to interact with them there and they liked them. There's a number of different things. There's a bunch of different outside variables, but all of these guys are capable of being developed into players, right? So whoever Chris Grier drafts, right? Whoever he drafts, it's up to the coach to develop them, right? And put them in a position to be successful, right? And when you draft guys, you got to have good position coaches that understand what you want to do in the offense. So if you draft in a tight end, hey, I need to have a good tight end coach who's going to develop him, teach him the techniques I need in order to be successful in my offense, right? So I don't think we can say Chris Grier's job is to draft players that can be developed, and not all players drafted can be developed. So the GM can be responsible. I don't think that's the case. The GM is responsible for drafting guys, right? He drafts guys. He's talking to the coach and figuring that out. It's their responsibility to develop them, right? It's their responsibility. Like, you can't put that on Chris Grier. Chris Grier does not go out there with a clipboard and a pad. He doesn't run practice. He doesn't watch film with them guys. He doesn't do none of that. At that point, it's like, hey, I've given you the child. Now you go raise him, right? I've drafted this kid for you. Go turn him into a player, McDaniel. Flo, go turn him into a player, right? And that's what I think. And that's my biggest gripe with Flores. And I hate to get on Flores, but it's like, Flores, you're a head coach, right? Your responsibility is to coach up your guys. I can understand you wanting other guys, but while he's in the building, while guys are in the building, you have to be in tune with coaching up whoever you have to the best of your ability, right? And if you do that, the chips will fall where they may. As long as you do that, you straight. You got to do that, though. You can't be like, oh, we drafted this guy. We talked about him. We got him in the building, but now I don't think he's good enough. You can't. Now I don't think he's good enough. I don't want him as my QB. You can't, bro. You can't do that. You got to find a way to pull the best out of him. I mean, and that's the thing. We see now we see now that Chris Grier, Brian Flores did not pull the best out of Tua Tagovailoa. We see that, right? Now, maybe that's because of the weapons around him. Maybe that's because the confidence he was given. There's a lot of variables in regards to that too. I'm not going to say it's one thing, right? But you guys got to be in tune with what GMs do. They don't coach players, bro. They don't develop players at all. All they do is draft guys and they expect the coach to develop them. Now, coaches have schemes that they're supposed to fit in. That's why they draft scheme-dependent players. They want guys who are going to fit in what they do. I mean, that's just the nature of it. That's the nature of it. Now, man, TD going in. He says, so McDaniel will be responsible for Noah. Failed under Flores for 2 and about to lose next McDaniel for 2. So, no, because McDaniel didn't draft Noah. So that's a different story. And that, honestly, when it comes to drafting guys, and that's what I want you guys to understand. Wilkins is not a McDaniel guy. So I understand everybody saying, "Oh, we want to pay Wilkins. We want to pay him upwards of 20-something million. Like, we want him to be around. He's a character guy, great guy. I love Christian Wilkins as a player, but I also understand the nature of the business. And Mike McDaniel didn't draft Christian Wilkins. Now, I'm not saying because he didn't draft him, he doesn't want to pay him, but I'm saying because he didn't draft him, he's really not tied to him. He has no allegiance to him. He could choose to keep him around if he wanted to, or he could choose not to. It's up to him, right? Right. But Grier did. Grier drafted these guys, right? Grier drafted these guys with the help of Flores. They collaborated and they talked about guys he thought would fit in the system. Like you, TD, you know that. And I think you're just trying to troll me right now because you know that when it comes to drafting, Chris Grier don't even look like the type of guy to be like, yo, I know you want this guy, but I'm going to draft this guy because I think he's better and I think he fits the system better. No, bro, that's not the case. Why would you do that? You're putting yourself in a bad position as a GM. You're trying to butt heads with the head coach and tell him what he needs and what he doesn't need. Bro, I'm getting my head coach what he needs, unless it's something that's outlandish and something we can't afford, right? Like, that's just common sense. Like, that's a working relationship. Like, you got to understand that. Like, you got to understand that GMs are doing what their head coaches want to do. And they're trying to build a working relationship with their head coach that they could be successful, because a GM's responsibility is to put their head coach in position to be successful, right? So if the GM is getting, if the coach is banging the table for a specific GM, if the coach is banging the table for a specific player, of course he's going to try his best to get that player. And that's why I think we have guys like Tyreek Hill. That's why I think we have guys like Jalen Ramsey and guys like David Long Jr., right? Malik Reed. These free agents come in because they know they're a fit for what they're about to do, right? They know their responsibility. Now, TD Phins Talk says, who's responsible for Channing Tindall? Good question. Good question. That's partly on McDaniel, right? That's partly on McDaniel. That's partly on Boyer, because he's the defensive guy at the time, right? So all of them are responsible for that draft, for drafting those guys, right? Now, Tindall was a rookie last year. So, I mean, I'm not out on Tindall at all, right? He's a young player. It's going to take time. Now, can he start getting reps this year? Yeah, he can. He can start getting reps. So I'm not saying that these guys that aren't getting PT yet, Eric Izukama, Braylon Sanders, these are rookie guys who just haven't seen the field yet. When you have a wide receiver room like Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Sherfield last year, Craig Calf, like, those are players who've been in the NFL for a while, right? They're going to beat out those rookies who are trying to understand the playbook, who can't play fast yet because they're thinking too much, right? Especially if they know the verbiage and they know the playbook. The older guys are going to have the advantage, especially if they played in the system. Like a lot of these guys came from San Fran. Sherfield came from San Fran under the same system, same verbiage, same everything, right? So of course Sherfield's going to have the up on a guy like Eric Zukama or Braylon Sanders just because he's been around longer. He knows the verbiage. He knows where to line up. Receiver, that's not an easy position to play, to come in and play right away. It's just not. It's just not a linebacker, not really an easy position to come in and play right away. It's just not. So I understand what you guys are saying, right? And I'm gonna drop the link. I'm gonna get a few people up here for a little bit, right? Just for a little while. TD, feel free to come up if you want to. I don't want to get too crazy, but I dropped a link for you. But yeah, I just think it's easy for people to hate on the GM, but bro, you can't. I think when it comes to developing players, a lot of that falls on the coaching staff, and there's other ways that I think you just got to figure it out. Shout out to the homie Tony Manzano. What's good with you, Tony? What's popping?
Hey, CB. I want to offer pushback. I agree with TD in a sense because before he became the general manager, you look at his background. He was the head of our scouting and development department. So as a GM, wouldn't that precipitate him being a great developer of talent, though?
No, not necessarily. It just wouldn't. Like, and that's what you guys got to understand. You think because a guy worked in a position, he's just going to come in and be fantastic at.
Wouldn't that talent translate, though?
Like, wouldn't it translate? You would think so, right? But you also got to understand that he's not solely responsible for selecting these guys, Tony. And that's what I want you guys to understand. A lot of you guys think, oh, Grier's the GM. He's solely responsible for drafting this player in this round. No, the coach has a lot to do with it. I mean, you don't understand that? Like, it's a collaboration.
No, I understand that, but when I look at GMs, I'm comparing them to the GMs that became GMs around the same time as he did.
Okay.
They've had issues with coaching, and they still were able to develop. Look at Cincinnati. Before this guy became head coach, that general manager there was able to develop the talent that they had before decent coaching.
Well, let's look at Cincinnati. Cincinnati has been a bad team for a long time. Like, let's be completely honest with ourselves, right? So Cincinnati was getting first early pick, lottery picks early in the draft for a long time prior to getting Joe Burrow. Like, let's be completely real with ourselves. And they were fielding teams that were fairly bad. We always beat them, and we always beat them fairly easily, right? So over time, you're drafting guys that are talented. Eventually, you get a coach in there who can deliver, right? Zach, what's the name of the coach? Is it Zach Randolph?
Zach. Oh my God!
Is it Zach Randolph?
No, not Randolph. Zach.
Zach, right?
He was an offense. He was our quarterback. He came from the Andy Reid tree. Right. Yeah, he was an Andy Reid quarterback coach.
And he was our quarterback coach here in Miami, right? You get a coach over there who's building a system, right? He's an offensive coach. He kind of understands the game. He's a younger guy, right? And he's building the system. And then he gets Joe Burrow, right? He hits on Joe Burrow, gets a quarterback, right? The O-line was still bad, right? The running back situation was good. He had good receivers. He got good talent, and his defense was decent, right? So when you put that together and you have a decent coach kind of implementing, and you can develop Joe Burrow, now they're in a position where they're a competitor in the AFC. And that's because, honestly, the AFC is really kind of, especially their division. Their division was kind of wide open for the taking. The Ravens were still fairly good, right?
The
Pittsburgh,
Steelers were rebuilt in the middle of a rebuild.
yeah, the
Kinda.
Steelers are in the middle of a rebuild. The Browns were still the Browns, right? They still couldn't figure it out. And they have an opportunity to take over the division, right?
Okay,
So
I have a
don't
better
think it was,
comparison. How about a team that has been successful as we are when it comes to playoff appearances? The
who was
Cowboys.
that?
The Cowboys.
Bro, and look, the Cowboys have always had talent. Like, and they've always kind of built through the trenches. They had a good offensive line for years with Zeke and running the football. Dak was always formidable. It didn't matter who they put at quarterback, the quarterback could still win a football game because they had enough talent around them, right? He still had receivers, he still had running backs, he still had a solid offensive line. It didn't matter who you put in that system. He was going to be able to try and win the football game or be competitive in the football game as long as he didn't turn the ball over, because the defense has always been decent for Dallas.
Okay.
Right? Now, when you look at Miami's situation with Flores, right? The offense was just
horrendous,
right? The play calling was horrendous. Everything about it, I think, was bad, right?
Mhm.
The only bright spot for the offense was Waddle for a little bit of time.
For a couple games, Preston Williams.
Tua, a couple games, Preston Williams. Devontae would have his spurts where he played and he wasn't injured, right?
Mike Gesicki
would make some plays here or there, right? But overall, it just wasn't a really good offense. It wasn't a good offense at all.
It wasn't cohesive.
Right. And who is it? Whose responsibility is it to provide cohesion?
For me, I would say kind of mix. I have 50-50 between the GM and the coach.
No, it's not. It's not the responsibility of the GM to provide cohesion for a football team. It all falls on the head coach, right? That falls on the head coach.
The reason why I say 50-50, could I finish?
Go ahead.
Why I said it's 50-50?
Go ahead.
Because wouldn't it say that being that the coach is struggling looking for head coaches struggling looking for position coaches and stuff, maybe it's the hiring process from above that's having the issue, not the coach.
No, and that's what I want you to understand when it comes to coaching, right? So Brian Flores was a rookie head coach. He's being given an opportunity to be an NFL head coach. He had never been a head coach before, right? So if he's given the opportunity to be a head coach, he's going to be, and part of this process is building a staff, right? And part of building that staff is having relationships in the NFL that you've basically cultivated over the years, right? And now you'll have guys who want to come coach with you on your staff, right? Now, if you haven't, hold up, Tony. No, hold up. Now, if you haven't built those relationships and cultivated relationships outside of the Patriots organization, you're going to have a hard time bringing guys in, or you're going to be relying on other people through channels who have to help you assemble a staff. So you got to call an offensive coordinator at another team and say, hey, do you know this guy? Can you introduce him to me? I'd like to, maybe bring him down. Can you get me his contact information so I can make contact and reach out? Now, at this point, you don't really know these guys. You don't really know them. You haven't cultivated a relationship. So when it comes down to it, you bring them in and you realize that they're really not on board like you thought they were. They're really not what you thought they were. So as a result of that, it kind of puts you in a bad position, right? So I think that's a part of it too. And if Brian Flores couldn't, I think that was his weakest point as a head coach. He just could not assemble a good coaching staff.
And CB, this is why, honestly, when we first hired Flores, I'm like, I think this is a mistake. I think he should have gone to another before. He's been his whole career with the Patriots. He should have gone to maybe an Andy Reid and learned under Andy Reid for a little bit before he became, so he can build connections through like going to different coaching.
Of course, and
For like,
and that's what ideally coaches would be in that situation where they've traveled around, took from different head coaches, and now they've built the way they're coaching, how they coach, right? So that would be ideal. Going from going to a couple different staffs and understanding, hey, I like this coach, I like what he does here, I like Belichick, I like what he does here. I'm gonna take a mix of the two and bring that into what I do in Miami. That would be ideal. Yeah. But that just wasn't the situation. But I wanted to address this comment by Ritter. It says Grier drafts based on upcoming contract dumps, i.e. Cam Smith, right? Now, any GM, right? Any GM, any team, any head coach, right, understands that there's a aspect to the game of football that's a business, right? That's a business. So he understands that guys are aging at certain positions too. X is getting older, right? If X is getting older, we need to find a guy to come in and not compete for reps, but compete to ultimately take over. X eventually will have to pass the torch. That's just the nature of the business, right? He can't play corner forever. His body will begin breaking down. Also, you're thinking, hey, at the secondary level, you're constantly drafting guys. Corners, you're constantly going to draft. It's a premium position. You always need playmakers there. It's become a throwing league, so you're always going to need guys to defend that. So I think you're right in a sense. Grier drafts based on upcoming contract. I think everybody is drafting based on upcoming contract dumps. You should be looking toward the future. And if you're not looking toward the future and what you're going to have or what you may be missing, then you're dropping the ball.
And CB, this is what I can criticize actually when it comes to drafting certain positions. I think we're stuck with the linebacker position specifically. I think we're stuck drafting the old school type of linebackers instead of moving towards the more athletic guys. It seems like we're drafting more the traditional linebackers and stuff like that. Like the old, like when that's what we had with Raekwon and Jerome Baker. They're traditional run stuffing linebackers.
Well, no, I think Baker is the opposite of that. He's the new school linebacker who's athletic, who can run sideline to sideline, who isn't a thumper, who doesn't get downhill. And I think that's mainly been our problem. Like, just not drafting a thumper. At some point, you got to draft a guy who's going to come downhill and smack you in the mouth. And we haven't typically done that. Like we passed on guys who were thumpers in order to get more athletic guys. Yeah. Now, it's all going to be scheme dependent, right? So Flores needs a certain linebacker for his defense. Fangio is going to need a different type of linebacker for his defense. Maybe they're the same. Maybe they're not. But you're going to get guys in the building who kind of fit what you do defensively.
And CB, we've talked about this before, that in general, when you're looking at how high school and college are transitioning, they're transitioning away from that thumper linebacker, that traditional thumper linebacker. Most of the linebackers are hybrid linebackers that can cover and run defense. So the traditional run thumping linebacker that you want doesn't exist anymore. So really, it's going to be hard to draft that the next few years because that is starting to become extinct. Do you agree?
I think so. I think there's still some guys in college football who are thumpers. I just think it's more of I think they want guys who are more versatile now, right?
Yes.
And with versatility comes a guy being able to get downhill and a guy who can run sideline.
They're not specialized. They're not as specialized as they used to be.
Yeah. And when you look at a guy like Roquan Smith, who could do it all, right?
Yeah.
He's just going to get paid a premium.
Or Ryan Shazier.
Yeah, because those are guys who really are dudes who can do both. the Devin Whites of the world, the Roquan Smith.
Would you say Luke Kuechly was like that, or was he more of a traditional?
I think he was more of a traditional guy, but he had the athleticism to be able to drop into coverage and to do stuff out of the ordinary, cover a tight end, right? But you look at guys like Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman; those dudes were downhill traditional linebackers, would smack you in the mouth.
Carlos Dansby.
Yeah, and I think those guys are. I think that's what's missing in the linebacker room for us. It's just one of those guys who gets downhill, for sure. Shake Money, what's good with you, my boy?
Hey, what's good, man? And you know what? And speaking of traditional thumpers, Bill Belichick always keeps one on his roster.
He does.
He may not use them all the time, but he pulls them out on certain situations where he needs to be.
Right. And honestly, I feel like you need that dog in the middle sometimes. Even if you're not going to use them all the time, you need to be able to pull them out in some games where a team is just getting downhill on you right away. And that's why, honestly, I liked Landon Roberts. Landon Roberts wasn't the best linebacker by any means, but when it comes to being downhill, he would hit the gap at 100% speed, and he would smack the shit out of you. That's what I did like.
AVG.
And when it came to fourth down, bro, he was downhill. We got to get downhill right now, and I'm gonna come stick you. So I think that's what Miami may be missing. I think David Long Jr. is that guy. He's fast. He's instinctive. He can get in the backfield. He's elusive and get to a guy. But if anything, I think we may need to invest in a guy on that inside. I don't know if that's Reuben Foster out of Alabama. I don't know. I mean,
how about AVG?
AVG's solid. I don't know how AVG is going to do in the middle. I think he's more of an outside guy, but we'll see. But Shake, I wanted to touch base with you on the GM situation. How do you feel about Chris Grier as a GM?
I think he has his just like everybody, he has his strong suits and he has his weak points. I think so far the draft has been his drafting offensive linemen, and certain positions have been his weak points.
Yeah,
but I do like the fact, and the fact that he's good at contracts. He's good at hiring other people. Like you look at Marv Allen, Reggie McKenzie, GMs that he's not afraid to take to delegate. You know what I'm saying? He's not trying to do everything by himself.
Yeah, I do like that, and I think that makes sense, man. I think,
but at the same time, I do. I mean, whenever you were talking about cohesion, I gotta put a little bit on the GM, because at the end of the day, if you're getting players that doesn't jive well with your coach's scheme, it's gonna make the coach's job a lot difficult.
Much more difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but the coaches have the coach who he has to coach, but he does take some, not all, but I would say about 15% of that responsibility to make a proper team for his coaches.
I agree. Marino's Ghost says, breaking news: the parties of the incident, which occurred on June 18th, 2023 at the Hollover Marina involving Tyreek Hill, have resolved their differences. Okay, that's so maybe that isn't a situation. Maybe it isn't a situation. Got the homie Pete in the back. Pete, what's good with you, man? How you feeling?
Pete. Hey, what's up, guys? Not much, CB. You know already. I'm coming over here with the questions and the concerns that I had. What's up?
Give them to me so I can dispel those right now.
Thank you for having me up. So it'll be quick. I'm in and out. I'm working. I'm on the road right now. I'm actually starving, heading to go get something real quick. Hopefully Tropical Cafe doesn't have a long line right now making me wait. But this is the question I have. And
okay.
We're going to exclude quarterback. So quarterback is not even into the discussion. Forget about quarterback, okay? We're not even talking.
All right.
There's also 21 other positions that this is the thing I have. When I saw you, shout out to you. I hit the like button.
Appreciate you, Pete. Appreciate you. You there? You breaking up. Can you hear me? Man, I think we lost him. Did we lose Pete?
Yeah, we probably lost him.
Yeah, Pete, we lost you. Come back through, bro.
And like me and Shake were talking, like me and CB were talking about early, Shake, and he corrected me a little bit about the whole. You would think him being the head of our scouting department and development department before he became our GM those talents would translate in developing talent as a general manager.
Yeah.
But sometimes those skills don't always translate, and CB made me realize that certain skills don't always translate to becoming the head of a big position like a general manager and stuff like that.
All right, check this out. Let me ask you a question, Anthony.
Yeah.
So if, let's say, for instance, you started off as a dishwasher, and you were doing the best job. Now you're a dishwasher, and you got to do tables, and you got to do something else. You're not going to wash the dishes as you did before, because that was your main focus. And that's with Chris Grier. He can't focus on scouting like he used to, because now he has to worry about contracts, upcoming free agents. So he has more on his plate. So at the end of the day, unfortunately, so he has to more depend on guys like Marv Alvin and Reggie McKenzie, because at the end of the day, his job isn't just scouting. He has bigger fish to fry at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I thought that also the to be a great general manager, shouldn't you be able to delegate some of that so you don't have that much pressure on yourself, like dealing with contracts and stuff like that? If you have a financial guy next to you, wouldn't?
Well, yeah, and I see where you're going, Anthony. So I just wanted to, and I see what you're saying, and that's why it's so important as a GM and Chris Grier to have good people around him, and that's what I want you guys to understand, because an organization, a football organization, the Miami Dolphins, is made up a bunch of different people. Right? There's a lot of people we aren't even mentioning who have a lot to do with football decisions in the building, right? The Garfinkles, the other guys. There's a bunch of different guys who have a lot to do with making the decisions. So that's why it's important to have a good team around you. And when you have a guy who's not on board with the team or who's fighting against the team, it becomes difficult. But you got to try to keep the team together. You got to defer to one another. You can't be a micromanager. And that's part of being a leader, right? You got to learn to defer to people and let them do their job. You can't always be micromanaging and realizing that, I got to step in and do everything. No, at some point you got to hire some people to do some work. Like that's part of the process. So
that's what that's what I can call Chris Grier out on. He's a high level micromanager. He doesn't want to delegate. He wants to control everything.
Well, I don't
and stuff like that.
I don't agree with that, because
what does he control?
I think he only controls player like bringing in players. I think that's bringing in the players. I think is all he does, and the money situation, right? So I think bring in players, bring in free agents, drafting players, working with the scouting department and McDaniel to select players. I think that's part of his process. I don't think he does a lot outside of that. I'm not saying his job isn't important. I just think he spends a lot of time focusing on what he could do to make the team better. Right.
And when I was seeing with Brian Flores, and even this year, like scouting combine, you'll see McDaniel by himself, and then you see Chris Grier by himself. They kind of divide and conquer and go to multiple scouting, and he allows, instead of him trying to go into every combine, he allows his people to go and scout and gather information that way.
Yeah, which I think is the best to do, to kind of defer to the room. But hey, Pete is back, man. Pete, what's good? Can you hear you now?
You can hear me? Yeah, I had to answer that call. I'm sorry. Try to tell you, but I had to answer. So I'm gonna get back to my question, and actually, what you were saying, CB, the end of what you were saying about Grier. Yeah. This is where he's gonna be put to the test with my concerns and the question that I'm gonna have you guys answer. I want to know. And remember, I'm excluding the quarterback. No quarterback talk here. 21 other positions. Training camp is looming around the corner. What position, and knocking on wood, if we get hurt at a certain position, what position do you guys feel like, man, that backup is, if he comes in, we have a high upside on him at least? or it could possibly be neutral, or it's just a disaster in your way. Like, what do you guys think? Because at this point, man, I just don't even want to follow up with the news because I'm so scared we're gonna get a breaking news right now shortly because that's just what happens, man. And I'm really concerned.
So you're concerned about the negative. You want me to touch on the negative first, or you want me to touch on the positive?
However you feel. I just want to know how you feel about that. You just got to tell me how you feel. Like
so when it comes to the roster, I think I'm fairly good with where we are right now. The main concern I have outside of Tua when it comes to health, main concern I have is tackle, right? So I feel like if Austin Jackson or Teron Armstead go down, I feel like we're at a disadvantage because we'll have to maybe move a guy like Rob Hunt out, and I feel like it's a shuffling process at that point. Because I don't feel like. Well, hold on.
You're answering it good, CB, but the question is more: where would you feel comfortable?
Oh,
right now you're saying, yeah, exactly.
Oh, where do I feel comfortable? I feel comfortable. Yeah. I think defensively,
if an injury were to happen at a position,
I think defensively, I feel fairly comfortable, right? Because a lot of those defensive guys are rotational pieces, right? Jalen Phillips, Agba, Chubb, Van Ginkel, they can all kind of play the same pass rushing position, right? So if we have a guy like that go down, it's going to hurt us for sure, but we got enough guys in that rotation to be able to just rotate another guy in. Secondary wise, I feel like we're very deep. I feel like if we get Brandon Jones back and we get Nick Needham back, we're looking at a secondary who could probably be the best secondary we've had in years back there, right? So, I mean, I feel comfortable with the secondary too. So defensively, I think I feel comfortable everywhere. Inside linebackers a little thin. David Long Jr. goes down. I don't like seeing Baker on the inside, but he's got to play there if he goes down. So, I mean, I think defensively we're solid. What do you think, Shake?
The one thing I like about the offensive tackle position is that if Armstead goes down, it's, we have Wynn waiting in the wings. So it's a
shuffle.
The guard.
It's a shuffle, right?
It's the guard.
Yeah. So so if a tackle goes down, you're looking at pulling somebody from guard, right? So you're gonna have
and we can do the
guard.
same thing. We could do the same thing with the right side. We can move Hunt if we need to. But it's the guard. Yeah. It's the guard situation and then
the center position is worrisome actually.
And then because we don't have a backup for that one either. But the one I feel the middle linebacker position, I think is Vic Fangio's specialty. So that's why I'm not too concerned because he seems like he could kind of like one of those players like Andy Reid. He could turn a mediocre quarterback into a serviceable quarterback, and that's what I think Vic Fangio could do with middle linebackers.
I like that. What do you think, Tony?
For me, I would say it's a defensive line because if a guy like we don't have true backups at the hand in the dirt pass rusher, most of the guys we're talking about like Phillips, Chubb, Agba are stand-up guys. We don't have a lot of hand in the dirt type of pass rushers who are always like head up with the offensive tackle and stuff. So if let's say a guy like Phillips gets injured, who do we have as backup for the hand in the dirt guy?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you have like Chubb, you can rotate on that side. Agba, you can try to stand up. I mean, it just becomes a shuffling game at this point, which you don't want, but you may have to do it at some point.
Do we have enough depth at defensive tackle if, let's say, Raekwon or Wilkins gets injured?
Yeah, but Anthony, again, you have to think about not those positions then because you seem to not think we have depth, and I agree with you. But the question is, what position gets injured in camp and you feel good about someone as the backup coming back in and maybe playing the same level of play, maybe better or maybe worse, but still, like what position do you feel good?
Oh, I feel comfortable. Honestly, I'm going to shock everybody. I'm fine with the running back position. to be honest.
Okay. I like.
That's
I mean,
the first.
I like that.
I like that too because mine honestly is like on CB's point. To be honest with you guys, and it might not make sense. I get it, but you just gotta understand sometimes and just maybe just give him that starting chance. I do think with the regression of Xavier Howard and what we saw last year, Cam Smith comes in. I don't think that's a real big drop off, and that's a position I think that we can probably get better play from if Cam Smith becomes who I think Cam Smith is based on the film alone in this system and the expertise and teaching of Vic Fangio.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So I think we could get the most out of Cam Smith. I don't think that if, let's say, we lose Xavier Howard and Cam, it's going to be breaking news. But I'm just trying to give you guys a heads up. It's not going to like impact us as much as the media might portray it to be, because I think someone like Cam Smith could be able to come in and just give that same level of play immediately.
Yeah. And
Pete, don't forget we have Jalen Ramsey on the team too.
Yeah.
So he can move back to boundary and have Cam on the other side if X gets injured. So people need to realize we have Jalen Ramsey on the team who can move back out to boundary.
But I think, and I think, guys, I think that's why. So when we drafted Cam Smith, people were in an uproar. Like, why are we drafting cornerback? We got Jalen Ramsey. I think that's why we drafted him, because if a guy goes down there, you want to have a good enough room to be able to pick up where you left off at, right? If you don't have a good enough room to pick up where you left off at, and there's a huge drop off, you're gonna get points scored on you. You're gonna give up third downs. So I think that's why Cam Smith was our first pick, because Fangio's like, bro, I need some more pieces in the secondary. Like, this isn't enough. Like, just imagine one of these guys go down. You still got Kader Kohu. You still got a couple other guys who could maybe come in and make plays. I love Kohu, but you still want to have a young guy you can develop to and eventually be that X or be Jalen and grow into that, right? And when you have a guy like X in the room and you have a guy like Jalen in the room, right? And you draft a rookie like Cam Smith, who's just a great talent, tremendous athlete, you're thinking, hey, I'm going to get the best bang for my buck, because those two guys are going to be able to pour into that guy and make him an even better player, right?
And what people forget, CB and Shake, is I think the cornerback position on the defense is the one that has the biggest drop off in terms of not talent, but like their athleticism as they get older. Do you guys agree?
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree, because they're just tremendous athletes and they have to be able to run. These wide receivers are really good now coming out, right? So since these wide receivers are such tremendous athletes, they can stop on a dime, come back to the football. Those guys got to be great back there. They got to be great. So I understand totally what you mean by that. And that cornerback drop-off happens quick. It does. And we saw a little bit of that last year with X and his injuries. Like, he struggled, right? He still made some plays here and there, but he struggled running after guys. And that scheme wasn't the best for him to just play man the whole game. He needed to be able to face the quarterback. That's one position
I can give Chris Grier.
He's hit.
Yeah. No, he knows how to scout the cornerback position very well.
His cornerback, safety, he's hit on those. Like, he typically
But
hits.
The other positions, he struggles so much. Why?
Yeah, I think look, and that's what we talk about. So he typically hits on corners and stuff when you have a defensive guy, right? You have a defensive coach in the building. But when you have an offensive coach in the building, you typically are going to hit on offensive guys, because your head coach is kind of the one cultivating a lot of that. And that's just kind of my thought press on it. I think head coaches have a lot to do with drafting guys and making sure they get guys that are scheme dependent and that work in their system. I think that's important, man.
Yeah, and I agree. I see what you're saying, but to me, I think we, as people, as fans in general, we've put so much. I think we don't. I think we the perception of the coach having that much power in terms of drafting, I don't think is as much as we think it is. I think the GM and the front office is the one drafting the players.
I don't think so. I think coaches have a lot to do with it. I think coaches have a lot to do with it because honestly, what good is drafting guys that aren't going to fit in your scheme? Right?
Like, because I thought elite talents
it don't always translate.
Doesn't really care about.
No, see,
doesn't matter about the scheme.
It doesn't really translate. So if I looked at a guy who played a lot of man-to-man defense, his primary thing was playing man-to-man defense at the cornerback position, and he manned up all the time. And my defensive coordinator runs zone scheme, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's going to get into the zone scheme, and he may struggle because we haven't seen him do it well on film. We haven't seen him play the zone scheme well on film. So that may not be his strong suit, right? Mm-hmm. You guys remember playing NCAA 14, NCAA 13. When you're scouting guys, you want guys who are going to fit well in what you do, right? That's a part of the recruiting process. You're looking at guys who do it well on film, and you kind of do the same things at the NFL level. I think that's just where it's at.
See, and CB, this was where I can push back on you a little bit because look at Noah. He was drafted as a pure man-to-man corner, but I don't think just because you're a pure man-to-man corner in college doesn't mean necessarily that skill set will translate into the NFL. Maybe he's a great zone corner in the NFL, but he was a great man-to-man corner, but he's better in zone and in the pros, because having that, being a man-to-man corner in college is completely different from being a man-to-man corner in the NFL.
I don't know about Tony. It's still man-to-man, right? It's still man coverage. You still got to be athletic. You still got to run with guys. You still got to be able to play the ball and break on the ball, right? Corner playing zone defense from a corner's perspective is kind of totally different. Like, we're asking X to really do something he's never really done. He's gonna be kind of playing a little bit of man, a little bit of zone. He's gonna have the opportunity to face the quarterback now and have his eyes on what the quarterback is doing. That's not something he's typically done. So it's just a little bit different, man. But hey, I appreciate you guys coming out.
For sure.
I'm going to do final takes. I'm going to start with you, Anthony. Give me your final. Damn, he dipped. Damn. Anthony be dipping on the low, bro. He one of them dudes who come to the party and just slide out on you real quick.
Yeah. He said, let me get a few drinks and I'm out of here.
Exactly. Hey, but appreciate you coming through, Shake, bro.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah,
I got the Smoke Lounge tonight at 6:00. Lewis ain't going to be there, so.
I'm there. I'll be there. I'll come check you out for sure, bro. Be sure to check out Shake Money. Which channel are you going on?
Phins Tailgate for sure.
Okay.
And then tomorrow,
TFTG.
Tomorrow I'm gonna do my Tuesday panel. We're gonna start kicking out the Tuesday panels. I'm gonna go on for an hour tomorrow with Larry K. Larry K is gonna be coming back this month, so I can't wait for him to come back.
Nice. That'll be cool. Get Larry K back into the fold. Hey, you guys doing good things over there, man. I love what you're doing, man. I love how you building it, and I see you grinding, bro. It has not gone unnoticed, bro. I love what you're doing, bro.
Hey, man. But one of my things is I rather give me cash over credit. So I don't care who gives me the credit. The fruits of its labor is going to pay for itself. You know what I'm saying?
Of course, bro. It's head down, keep grinding, bro. Head down, keep grinding.
And by the way, this Wednesday, Dr. Reginald was going to be with us in the Smoke Lounge. I'm starting a new series. I'm getting some people together. I'm going to do wide receiver 101. So we're going to talk about all the nuances that go on to being a wide receiver. And Dr. Reginald is going to help us break it down.
That'll be dope, bro. That'll be dope, man. I'll be there to check it out, bro. I support all your stuff.
Man, likewise.
Keep doing what you're doing, bro. It's all love, bro.
And I tell you what, I do appreciate you because I noticed that when I'm doing a stream, I notice you're always in the chat section showing me love. And I may not come up all the time, but I'm in the chat section showing love you as well. So, man, the feeling is mutual, and I appreciate you as much as you appreciate me. Trust me.
For sure, bro. For sure. And I'm looking forward to this season, bro. It's going to be a hell of a ride. I think all of the content creators are going to blow up this season once we go get this Super Bowl. And it's going to be a hell of a year for us. So
for sure.
Get ready. Let it rip, Shake. Let it rip.
Hell yeah. All right, my brother. You be safe, man. Good seeing you, as
Be
always.
good, bro. Be good, bro. Later. Hey, appreciate you guys coming through. Appreciate the homie Shake Money and Anthony Manzano for getting on the panel with me. Hey, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. Hey, be sure to turn on notifications. I will be going live all the time. We are getting camp coverage tomorrow. Maybe the guys hit the field, maybe they don't. I'm sure they'll get out there and do something. I know they're going to have a lot of meetings, right? When you get into camp, right, you got to have these meetings about, even as professionals, how you're supposed to act, what you're supposed to do. Coach is going to touch on the rookie hazing. Hey, don't let it get out of hand. Don't have these guys doing stuff you wouldn't want to do. Let's have a good time. Let's be professionals. Show up on time. Attention to detail. That's what you guys got to understand. Right now, it's about attention to detail, doing the little things. If you could get the practice on time, you can get the meetings on time, and you can do the little things right, you can get out there and make plays in the game, and you're going to be a guy that's counted on this 53-man roster. So right now, it just starts with these guys building their resumes. It's about them getting into the building, learning and understand what the coaches expect from them, doing what the coaches tell them to do, doing the little things, working after practice, getting the work in, getting there early, watching film, watching practice film with coaches, understanding, hey, this is where coach wants me to get better. And these guys go out there with a mentality like, every day, let me work on something, let me get better at something, get better at my craft. So I'm looking forward to seeing these guys compete. I think we had a great year last year, roller coaster of a ride, but I think we've dealt with all the adversity we can deal with. And now we're just in a position to go out there and play, right? Because we've seen everything last year. We've seen it all. Injuries, penalties, dumb plays, smart plays. We've seen a little bit of everything. Now it's just a matter of going into it, executing, understanding what we need to do. Iron sharpens iron. I think Vic Fangio is going to make Mike McDaniels a better coach. I think McDaniels is going to make Fangio a better coach. And I think this team is prime for taking that damn thing, for taking it, right? So I'm looking forward to seeing that. Hopefully I can get down there in the next week or so, get eyes on them, tell you guys exactly what I see. Be sure to check out other content creators who are headed down to Miami Sunday to see them practice. Be in tune, be in the know, understand it, watch the film. Don't be a casual. Get in the lab, right? Don't throw out narratives. Be a guy who understands what's going on and understand the game of football, man. There's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of context. That's why CB83 always knew Tua was that dude. Now, I might have got pissed at Tua a couple of times for not being available and shit like that, but I knew the kid was capable from day one just because I know football, right? I can look at the game and be like, yo, this kid's good enough. He's good enough. Give him some help. Give him some receivers, some dogs who can make some plays. And shit, we're going to make a run at it, right? Especially if you got the same defense you had that was top 5, right? Why not? Right? Come on, bro. That's how we get it. So really appreciate y'all coming out. You know how we get down. I'm cranking up. I might go live again tonight. Just be ready, right? You got to be ready. So be sure to like, share, subscribe, turn on the notifications. If you're not getting them, you won't be in the know. As simple as that. Let's go. Yes, sir, man. I appreciate everybody coming out. Appreciate y'all. Love y'all. Be good. Check in with everybody who's doing shows tonight. Like I said, I might be back tonight or tomorrow. Be sure to check me out. Hey, it's CB83 with another one, and I'm out. Another banger.
Came from the bottom, that's foreign. I swear that I'm up for the sun in the morning. Oof, hey, I gotta flex. I need a Nike bag, give me the check. I need the money and power, respect, but I promise I'm repping the O to the dead. Hey, oof, I sold them out of my way. I don't got nothing to say. Now they can't run at my pace. Yeah, they know that we ain't the same. 402, we rep the game.